Those who know the right questions must reach those asking the wrong ones, and sometimes even the lost. I protect my identity because truth has a body count. Welcome to the Anarchist File. You think you're free? Cute. You think because you've got a phone, a fridge, a job, and a few hundred followers on a dopamine app that you're reliving in some evolved society, some post-feudal, post-Freshen utopia of rights and upward mobility? You're not. You're just a better-dressed peasant with Wi-Fi, a modern serf, aesthetic casing, tax-paying, credit-leave, wage animal grazing inside a digital pasture, and calling it freedom because the walls are soft and the bars are invisible. Let me guess. You went to school, got decent grades, maybe even a degree. You wake up every morning, grind for 10 hours under fluorescent lights, drink caffeine like it's oxygen, and come home to reheat food and stream distraction until your eyes close from exhaustion and you think, I'm doing all right, bro. The peasants in 1225 AD did the same thing. Wake, work, obey, collapse. At least they knew who owned them. You don't. You think you're self-made while sending 30% of your income to a state that offers potholes, lockdowns, and overpriced insulin in return? You think you're independent while making rent payments to faceless corporate landlords who bought up your neighborhood with BlackRock's monopoly money? You think you're thriving because your streaming subscription auto-renewed? You're not a citizen? You're a tenant? A user? A node? You're allowed to play the game, but only as long as you don to win. Because if you start winning, if you start owning, if you start exiting their little hamster maze, the system pulls out the rubber mallet and reminds you, you were born to be managed. This isn't for everyone. Most people aren't ready. They still believe in the fairy tales, the bootstrap propaganda, the land of opportunity copium that gets injected every election season like a national sedative. This is for you, the guy who's starting to feel the simulation glitch, who knows something's off, who looks around and sees successful people still renting, still stressed, still spiritually bankrupt. You were born into a class system so well designed, you didn't even see the ladder they pulled up. Let me show it to you. Feudalism didn't die. It rebranded. You think because you're not plowing the Lord's field in exchange for shelter, that you're not a serf. You are. Except now the field is your office. The crops are your time. And the Lord is a blue-chip landlord with an ESG score and a LinkedIn profile. Serfdom 2.0 runs on subscriptions, rent payments, and quiet resignation. Start with land, the foundation of all wealth. In the old world, if you didn't own land, you didn't matter. Same today. But now, the land's been fractionalized, securitized, and bought up in bulk by institutions with deeper pockets than your entire bloodline. The average millennial can't buy a house. Not because they're lazy, not because they spent too much on avocado toast. Because Blackstone, Zillow, and friends bought the block with cash before they even got pre-approved. You don't own, you rent your apartment, rent your car, finance your phone, monthly lease, your mattress, subscription, your gym subscription, your entertainment, your food, your storage, your software, all access granted, no equity, no permanence. They don't even have to own you. They just own the stuff you need. You're not a customer, you're a tenant. You're living on borrowed time and leased goods. A paper-mon peasant convinced you're free because the delivery window is under 2 hours. And every single month, your modern lord gets their cut. Rent payment, auto draft, auto pay reminder email, 15th of the month. Thank you for your obedience. Miss a payment. The gates close. The system retracts. You're late. You're penalized. You're scored. You're rated. You're downgraded. Serfs used to fear the lash. You fear the credit bureau. And what do you get for playing along? A cubicle. A car with Apple CarPlay. A studio apartment near a Whole Foods. You get to call this progress because the dose and tea smell like manure and the torture is digital. But the economics haven't changed. You work to stay in place. You toil to keep access. You generate value for the class above you and get just enough to stay alive and quiet, because the game isn't built for you to escape. Try saving. Go ahead. Stack cash. Inflation devours it. Try investing. Stocks are rigged. Real estate is gatekept. Crypto co-opted and certainty. Every exit they showed you is already mapped, tagged, and monetized. Try building a business. Get regulated to death. Hit with fees. Drown in paperwork. Get choked by policies to protect consumers. Written by lobbyists to bury competitors. Meanwhile, your lords thrive. They buy land, they buy politicians, they buy time. You buy an iced coffee and feel proud you tipped a barista 20%. And the most twisted part, you still think you're in the game because they gave you a costume, a little job title, a salary, a benefits package, HR trainings, promotions, email signatures. You get to pretend you're part of the machine because your cage is made of glass and your uniform is wrinkle-free. But here's the test. Unplug. Say no. Skip a payment. Miss a tax deadline. Refuse a mandate. Walk away from the career. What happens? The mask comes off. The whip gets raised. The smiles disappear. And suddenly, you realize how narrow your margin truly is. How much of your freedom was just compliance with a system designed to keep you in motion, but never moving forward. Modern serfs don't need collars, they need subscriptions, and you signed up for all of them. The lords don't play the same game you do. You fill out forms, they write the rules, you pay fees, they collect them, you stand in line, they own the building, you pay taxes, they buy politicians, you're living on the chessboard, they own the table. The game was never meant to be fair. It was meant to look fair so that you'd keep playing it. See? The real elite? They don't grind, they don't budget, they don't coupon. They don't de-stress about gas prices or student loans or whether it is time to refinance the car. They don't care. Because they don't live in your world. They live above it. They own, they leverage, they multiply. You exchange time for money. They exchange assets for power. You have a paycheck, they have cash flow. You pay bills. They collect rent. You dream of home ownership. They quietly own half your city. You think you're climbing the ladder. They're on the elevator. You think buying a duplex makes you a boss. They're buying entire zip codes. In cash, from trusts, hidden inside shell companies, registered 2 LLCs with no address, using profits from companies you work for. You pay into 401ks and hope it grows. They use tax loopholes you've never heard of to shift millions without a trace. Delaware LLCs, Nevada cores, opportunity zones, carry interest, capital gains arbitrage. You haven't even heard the vocabulary of power, and they've been using it to strip mine the economy since you were in preschool. And while you sit there blaming yourself for not working hard enough, they're collecting interest off your ignorance. They own the means of production, of enforcement, of perception. Ever wonder why every narrative feels like it serves the same handful of people? Why every news network, every bank, every major company marches in lockstep when it matters? Because the lords own the signal. They fund the campaigns, they approve the talking points. They script the panic, the recovery, the stimulus, the crackdown. They light the fire and sell you the extinguisher, all while hiding behind 10 layers of plausible deniability. And when things collapse, they don't suffer, they buy the rubble. Recessions are clearance sales for the rich. While you're panicking, they're shopping, buying up businesses, land, politicians, even your time, all at a discount. Using money they didn't work for, generated from systems you're not allowed to touch. You lost your job in 2020? They tripled their net worth. You begged for a stimulus. They wrote off losses and bought private islands. You were scared of catching COVID. They were busy catching the next 5 years of your future income through debt, expansion, and equity grabs. They don't pay the cost of the chaos. They own the chaos. And the best part? You're still cheering for them, still buying their brands, still watching their content, still retweeting their talking points, thinking you're being edgy and informed while parroting the narratives they paid to implant. You're not in the system. You are the system. You're the liquidity, the labor, the user, the product, and the lords. They don't participate in the nation. They harvest it, quietly, surgically, and when they're done, they leave. Citizenship means nothing to them. They have passports in 6 countries and assets in 8. They don't care about borders. They care about control. They don't care about flags. They care about flows. They're not citizens. They're shareholders. And the country is just one of their revenue streams. How do you keep a population of digital serfs from noticing they're serfs? Easy. You medicate them with dopamine and distract them with nonsense. You feed them a steady diet of validation, outrage, and porn. And you make sure the cage is so entertaining, they forget it's a cage at all. The modern lord doesn't need force. He needs your consent. Manufactured, conditioned, automated, and he gets it. You wake up to a phone, you scroll, you absorb the algorithm, you clock in, you obey, you track your steps, you monitor your calories, you scan your badge, you update your resume, you sit through your performance review like it's a sacrament, you apply for the raise that doesn't come. You get the 3% cost of living bump that doesn't beat inflation. You buy groceries with your credit card, you watch TV to unwind. You rinse, repeat, smile, and somewhere in that loop, you convince yourself this is adulthood, that this is what winning looks like. It's not. It's domestication. You were trained, not educated. Trained to obey schedules. Trained to fear debt. Trained to chase credentials. Trained to respond to authority, to signals, to metrics you didn't design and don't benefit from. Your job performance, tracked. Your location, tracked. Your purchases, your browser history, your social media likes, all harvested, scored, filtered, monetized, not to punish you, to predict you, to make sure you stay in your lane. They know your weakness better than you do. They know you'll back off if the rent's on the line. They know you'll self-censor to protect your promotion. They know you won't speak up at work because you've got a family, a mortgage, a lease, a fragile little stack of comforts that can all be pulled with a single email. This isn't freedom, it's management. And you're a well-behaved unit in a data-driven plantation. You don't even need to be watched. You've been programmed to police yourself. That's the endgame. Not domination, but voluntary submission. The lords don't need boots on necks. They need metrics, behavior loops, feedback systems, social incentives, community guidelines, auto-moderation, AI-generated moral boundaries enforced by people who VA never met you, but know exactly what makes you hesitate. You can say anything you want as long as it doesn't interfere with capital. You can be anything you want as long as you stay paying. And if you ever get restless, they feed you rebellion, carefully packaged, digitally distributed. Aesthetic uprisings designed for venting, not victory. You dye your hair, you change your pronouns, you tweet something spicy and you feel brave, defiant. But the payments still process. The rent's still due. The job still owns your day. The leash is still on. They let you bark as long as you don't bite. Meanwhile, the real power moves silently. Offshore accounts, private foundations, lobbyist-crafted policy, strategic philanthropy that doubles as soft influence. Nobody protests that, because nobody sees it. You're too busy arguing on Twitter and applying to jobs that don't pay you enough to live. They've built an entire economy where your output feeds them. Your fear restrains you, and your content keeps the next generation sedated. You don't rebel, you rebrand, you don't resist. You recalibrate. Because real rebellion costs money. And you're broke, and they plan to keep it that way. The most powerful shackle isn't debt. It's the story they gave you about why you wear it. This is the final lock, the big lie, the neural override. The system doesn't just exploit you, it gaslights you. It makes you think you're choosing this. That your station, your debt, your stress, your stagnation, it's all because you didn't grind hard enough, didn't network hard enough, didn't budget hard enough. Bullshit. You were handed a script, just like everyone else. Work hard, play nice, follow the rules, and maybe, if you do everything right, you'll get a 2-car garage and a retirement party with cake. That's the dream. Or it was. Back when wages could buy homes. Back when inflation wasn't policy. Back when you could afford to make a mistake without it burying your next decade. That world doesn't exist anymore, but they still feed you the same script. Because it keeps you blaming yourself instead of them. You're broke. You're irresponsible. You're tired. You're lazy. You're not winning. Must be your mindset. Never mind that housing costs 8x more than it did for your dad. Never mind that college went from a stepping stone to a trapdoor. Never mind that acid inflation, global capital, and institutional capture have turned upward mobility into a cruel joke. No, you failed. You, not the system, not the currency, not the macroeconomic death spiral. Just you. That's the lie. It keeps you quiet, keeps you obedient, makes you nod along while your lords buy 5th homes and 3rd passports because they worked harder. But here's the punchline. They didn't work harder. They bought earlier. They inherited smarter. They owned when you were still in preschool and got in before the drawbridge lifted. And now they sell you bootstraps fantasy while pulling the ladder behind them with both hands. You think you're just one break away from making it? You're not. You're a resource. A perfectly compliant, infinitely demoralized worker serf who still believes he's just early on his journey. They weaponized your hope. They monetized your ambition. They built a class of people who will defend the system that exploits them just because they might benefit from it someday. That's the trick. You don't need chains. When your prisoners believe in the prison, and when they get restless, you feed them false idols. You put millionaires on TikTok? You run hustle porn 24/7? You show them the rented Lamborghini, the drop-shipped success story, the 22-year-old with a fake course and a Shopify login, and they chase it. Because deep down, nobody wants to admit they've been conned. It's easier to believe you one funnel away from a mansion than to face the fact that the economy was never designed to let you win. Just keep you playing. And so you keep swiping, keep working, keep building the brand, stacking the posts, grinding the fake hustle that burns your energy and sells your data and keeps you too distracted to ask, why does this feel rigged? Because it is. And the lords are laughing. Because your loyalty was the final product. You're not just broke, you're branded. You're loyal to the class that's devouring you. Because they convinced you they're your future. They're not. They're your replacement. You are not free. You were born into a plantation with glass walls, given a QR code and a job title, and told that because you have Spotify Premium and oat milk options, you're living the dream. But the numbers don't lie. You don't own land, you don't own assets, you don't own time, you don't even own your thoughts. They've been curated, monetized, and fed back to you through filtered content pipelines designed to keep you compliant, busy, confused. And the worst part? You still think you're winning. You defend your job like it's a calling. You defend your debt like it's strategy. You defend your taxes like they're the price of civilization, while your roads collapse and your cities rot and your rulers buy bunkers in New Zealand? That's not citizenship. That's indoctrination. You're not a stakeholder in society. You're a subscriber, a wallet with legs, a data point, a vote every 4 years to bless a king you'll never meet. He'll never serve you, who doesn't even know what your life costs to maintain. But here's the good news. Now you see it. And once you see the grid, you don't have to stay plugged in. You, Don T, have to beg for scraps from tables set by people who think of you as background noise. You, Don T, have to keep performing middle-class cosplay in a system designed to turn you into a tenant for life, a tax battery, a branded little unit in the empire of credit. You unplug. You opt out. You build cash. Real cash. Not fiat. Not IOUs from people who manufacture inflation with a smile at a press conference. You buy what they can't. Print land, skills, freedom, time. You learn leverage. You stop chasing salary and start building sovereignty. You stop financing symbols of success and start stacking tools for escape. And most importantly, you stop worshiping the game, because the game was rigged before you showed up. And every second you spend trying to win it is a second you re-not building something outside it. You don't need to be a king. You just need to stop living like a serf. Let the lords have their towers. You build fire. The story isn't over. This was the Anarchist File.